Does God guide the details of disasters? Yes, he does. Do you know how I know that? The very first, when this person asked me that in the hallway, I immediately thought of Matthew 10:29. You ought to turn there. That is a fascinating verse. I hope I remembered the verse right, but it is marked in my Bible, and I'll find it. That's the blessing of marking your Bible. Even if you get the reference wrong, there's enough marks by it, you'll find it easier. But, yeah, this is Jesus talking about problems like people, verse 28, that can kill your body. But verse 29 says something huge that all of us need to consider. Jesus said in verse 29, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin? And not one of them," so we're talking about sparrows here, "not one of them falls to the ground." Now that's interesting. That's kind of like, a kid shooting with a BB gun and one falls to the ground. And God says, "I am so great that every time a sparrow gets in a thunderstorm and dies and falls to the ground, or some kid shoots it with his BB gun, or just of natural causes wears out and dies, I know every time they hit the ground." That's nice. And did you know that is the Greek word pipto, I think, is the word that's behind that. Pipto can mean fall. In fact, it does, probably most often. But do you know what another use of this word is? I like this one even better. This word also can mean hops. Have you ever watched birds? Have you ever watched how they don't walk like it looks like they walk? There's a little spring in their step, and they're hopping beautifully. And when it slowed down, and I thought immediately of when this person asked me about, does God guide disasters? Our God is so great, he not only knows every time a sparrow dies and hits the ground, he knows every hop that they take down every sidewalk and street and park and rooftop and shore. And it says, it doesn't just say he knows it. It says, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin? And not one of them falls or hops to the ground apart from your Father's will." Whoa. That means that he has to grant, allow, enable, make it possible for them to fall, which is seldom, or hop, which is constantly. Every sparrow and everything else is assumed here. So, number one, does God guide disaster in the great sense of our sovereign God? Absolutely. Nothing happens apart from him. But within the disaster, how does he operate? And this is what's fascinating. Look at Ezekiel. This is the second thing I thought of when Sheila asked me that. Ezekiel 9. Now this is fascinating, and I don't want to get you all worked up on it. But this is why I love to read the Bible, because one of the times reading through the Bible, Ezekiel is sometimes a little tedious to read. And so I decided that, I do all kinds of stuff. I read it backward. I start in 48 and read to 1, just trying, or I'll listen to it and follow along or something. But when I got to chapter 9, a few reads back, I thought, what is going on here? I've never paid close enough attention. So let me just show you. This is a disaster. Ezekiel 9 is describing the Babylonians in one of their, I'm not sure if it exactly specifies, but they destroyed Jerusalem 3 times. First in 605, and they took Daniel. Second in 597, they took Ezekiel. So Daniel went off in this carry-off. Ezekiel went off in this one. And the whole city got, destroyed, and the temple and everything else in 586. So I'm not sure I haven't studied enough. I just thought of it just now. I'm not sure which time this is, but I do know this is talking about the Babylonians, which the Bible describes them as fierce, and they come riding in, and they're like bronze. They're so strong, and they can shoot their arrows. In fact, if you ever go to Jerusalem, there's actually a place in Jerusalem you can go to. It's called the Tower. And it's in the Jewish underground archaeological things, and you can visit it. And you can go down the staircase, and there's still a corner of this tower that the archaeologists left, and it has so many arrowheads. Babylonian, these people. I mean, they had so many arrows. I don't see how anybody survived in Jerusalem. And so that's what Ezekiel 9 is about. Now watch what happens. This is just absolutely fascinating to me. Then he called out in my hearing with a loud voice and said, "Let those who have charge of the city draw near, each one with a deadly weapon in his hand." I mean, I've read that 50 times, and I thought, yeah, it's just probably some soldier guys, what's new? Verse 2, "And suddenly 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his battle axe in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen and had a writer's inkhorn at his side. And they went in and stood beside the bronze altar." I don't know why I didn't ever notice. This is strange stuff going on here. We're not talking about Babylonians here. And if you have a study Bible, this is talking about, these are angels. This is God saying, I'm going to do something. And you know what's happening? The Babylonians, whichever one of these times, here's Jerusalem, and the Babylonians have encircled it and have all their sieges, and they're bursting in and breaking down the walls and catapulting and shooting all kinds of arrows, and more of the city is falling, and the people are basically holding out in the most secure area, which is the temple platform area. And look what the Lord deploys. He deploys 6 people and this guy has an inkhorn. And the glory of the God of Israel had gone up from the cherub, where it had been, to the threshold of the temple, and he called to the man clothed with linen. So this guy's different than the other 6. There's this kind of officer or something of the angels, this higher angel. He's clothed with linen. He had the writer's inkhorn at his side, and the Lord said to him, now listen, this is an angel. I would say universally commentators say this is an angel, and God sent him. And go through the midst of the city. Here's Jerusalem. It's burning here. Arrows are falling here. Battering rams are hitting here. People over here are starving to death. These don't have water. There are people laying in the streets. They can't even bury them fast enough. They're dying from the siege and everything. Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the forehead of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. Well, immediately that should shake you up, because Ezekiel has already been instructed by the Lord. He saw the leaders of Israel, the temple priest, bowing down and worshiping the sun. We covered that back when we were talking about Roman Catholicism and where Lent came from, and all of that is part of paganism that emanates from the Tower of Babel and Nimrod's wife, Semiramis, and her son that died. I mean, all of that paganism, the Jews had embraced. Baal was this sun that was resurrected. And so they would worship the sun and do all this stuff. And they were all facing the sun. It said their backs were to God, and they were worshiping the sun. And so the Lord asked Ezekiel to get on his hands and knees and go down and dig through the adobe, the mud that was in their house. Dig through the mud and look inside of their house. And God says, when you look inside, you're going to see what's in the chamber of their imaginations. It was all wicked abominations. And God says, whoever sighs and cries over the abominations that are done in Jerusalem, put a mark. So as Jerusalem's falling apart, Ezekiel 9 tells us, yes, God is guiding. You know what he's doing? He's marking all the elect, all of the remnant, all the ones that believe in him. And when the Babylonians came through and shot and chopped up people, they didn't kill the ones that God marked. They couldn't see the mark. This is a spiritual protection, kind of like the 144,000 you're going to see in Revelation have the same thing. And tell the others, say, in my hearing, go after him through the city and kill, and do not let your eyes spare. Utterly slay young and old. But these who are marked survive. So, real quickly, does God guide disasters? Absolutely.